Okay, hello everybody. I'm Byron Jacobs of D&B Publishing, and today I'm excited because we're talking to Evan Jarvis. Evan Jarvis has recently, hi Evan. Evan has recently done a book for us, this wonderful book, Mastering Small Stakes Cash Games, which Evan put his heart and his soul into this, didn't you, Evan? This was his life's masterwork. So we're very proud to have published this. And Evan, obviously, he's talking about how to beat the lower stakes cash games, but I would say that Evan takes a slightly different angle probably to some of our other authors, taking a more kind of what you might call holistic approach to the game. Would that be fair?
I think that's an accurate term to use, certainly.
Okay, that's great. So what I'd initially like to ask you is, first of all, tell us a little bit about writing the book. Did you find that you actually kind of learned some stuff yourself, or tell us a bit about how you found the whole procedure of getting all your knowledge down on paper?
Well, writing a book is definitely one of the most challenging projects I've ever undertaken. I'd wanted to kind of consolidate my knowledge for a long time. I'd probably been attempting to do it since about 2010. So it's been about a decade. But, I'd make many pages of notes, then not know how to put them together. I'd put together some Word documents and I'd have maybe 5 kind of chapters, but it's not a complete program, a complete product, a complete work. So what I found in writing the book was, first, it led to some doubt. Do I know enough? Which led me to do more research and kind of double check my work in as many places as possible. So that led to me being knowledge that I had, and led to me being a more skilled player as a result. So that was very helpful. It gave me an extra level of motivation to do that research as well, because suddenly what I was doing wasn't just for myself. It wasn't purely a for myself. It was about other people as well. And there were other people involved, other people counting on me. So that kind of unlocked an extra level of motivation and goals outside of ourself is a really valuable thing for. And I learned a ton about the value of teamwork. I've largely, poker's largely an individual pursuit until you get to the really higher levels of it, which we discuss in the book. But a lot of it's individual. And I'd always been the guy in school who, when we had a group project, I'm like, you know what, guys, I'll do most of the work, and then we'll just deliver that, and you guys don't have to worry about it. Or, I'll do the presentation of it and whatnot. And it showed me that to put together a project like this, that is a complete work, requires a team effort. You need people who can structure it. You need people who can organize it. You need people who can edit it. You need people who make sure you actually deliver the stuff on time. You need to keep people who are on you. You need people who won't let you quit. Because a project like this, there's a lot of self-reflection. There's a lot of challenge. There's a lot of doubt. There's a lot of worry. And if you don't have someone like Byron, for example, to say, man, you got this.
Kicking you up the backside periodically.
Exactly. When there were a couple of periods where I'm like, Byron, I just don't know how to do this part. He said, that's okay. I got someone who can help you out with that. So I realized, how important it is to work with a good team, to work with a team of people who have resources, who can connect you with the right person. And I also learned the power of consistency, really. The best results I had in poker were always when I was the most consistent. I had a schedule. I was kind of following a system. And for this, it was something completely new, because writing was not my strong suit. Languages were kind of my trouble subject in school. Math was my strong suit. Languages were my trouble subject. So there was a bit of a pain point, having to work with tutors in the past and that. But I feel like what I did here was I basically put together my final paper for college in the subject that I actually had been interested in. I studied economics and business on paper, but what I was doing was reading poker books, watching videos, playing cards. So this is me putting together my final paper, my final thesis on the game, and sharing everything that I've learned over a decade. And it was just really fun going through the process. While there was the challenge and the pain and the fear and the worry, getting the thoughts down, getting the stories down, getting the experiences down, getting to reflect. And knowing that instead of my whole life experience being scattered, that now it was all in one place, was a very exciting, relieving, rewarding, and kind of fulfilling feeling. So it was quite fun in the end, Byron, but it was quite challenging
That's
throughout.
great to hear, because it is often, I mean, you're a first time author, and once you've done one, it's maybe not so hard to do the next one, but it's a bit daunting, definitely doing the first one. And, I really got the impression that you kind of put your heart and soul into this book, for which we're really grateful. So that, that's wonderful. And we've accepted your PhD thesis. You've passed. Next thing I'd like to ask is a couple of things. You've obviously, you have your own kind of like coaching stuff that you do in your own site. So you work with probably a lot of players who would be natural buyers of a book like this. So what I would like to get from you is, what kind of player do you think would benefit the most from that book? And what kind of areas do those players really need to work on in their game to get themselves to by reading this book and also working on their game, to push themselves to the next level?
Mm-hmm. Two main types of players who would benefit from reading Mastering Small Stakes Cash Games. The first would probably be players who are pretty much completely new to the game. They watched it on TV, they played a couple times with friends, but they don't fully understand, what's going on or what's important, what you need to be focusing on when you're playing. Because what the book is, in large part, is basically a set of checklists and a set of kind of guidebooks. I kind of wanted to write like a strategy guide for poker players. I used to be a gamer, pick up a new video game, go to the store, buy the strategy guide, study the strategy guide, then play the game, have an easy time playing the game. I wanted to do that for poker. So there's a ton of stuff that people who are new to the game were like, I really like this game, but I don't know why these guys are winning and I'm losing, or why I'm winning this much but not winning more, or winning some of the time but not all of the time. And so it's really good in that area, that it'll comprehensively cover, what you need to be paying attention to, why it's important, why certain players are winning, why certain players are losing, what to do, what not to do, and so on and so forth. The other type of player that would benefit from this book is probably someone who is really heavily focused on purely the strategy. How to play a hand, how to play a range, how to play this certain hand in this position on this board texture, who's gone really deep with maybe, the solver work and going intense on that, but has forgotten a little bit of the how to be a poker player, how to person on the table and off the table. Because what I found in my experience playing poker was, I got to that point where I was obsessed with the game and studying hands and this and that, and doing well financially, but I wasn't doing best, physically, spiritually, emotionally, relationally. And, probably the last quarter of the book or so really covers that, how to be a complete person while being a poker player, because having lived through it for over a decade, being, the professional poker player, and how that works with family and how that works with friends and people in other career and within the career as well, how to kind of navigate that and make it work. So I think those are the two types of people who would benefit from it. In terms of what, to the second part of your question, what different types of players need to work on. The ones who are purely focused on the strategy and are making great money doing that, just probably need to focus on the lifestyle habits that will lead in the career of poker. Because the beautiful thing about poker as a card game is it's something you can play into your 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, even 80s perhaps, provided that you plan for that appropriately. Whereas if you're just obsessed with the game, not necessarily falling into the dangerous, the degenerate behaviors that we think about in the movies, but just spending too much time in a high stress state, always thinking, always problem solving, always crunching numbers, and kind of exhausting the system and forgetting about the world around us, that can really take a toll. So just getting some awareness to the fact there's more to the game than just running sims and solving hands, I think is something that is beneficial for people to be aware of. And then for newer players, I think the biggest thing is not being in a rush to win all the money or get the highest score. Because when people first find poker, myself included, it's very exciting. There's a rush. There's the gambling element, the luck, the huge payoff. Oh, I won a tournament. It's all very exciting and overwhelming. But there can be a desire to just go for that feeling. And while that feeling will come through occasionally throughout the career from, good sessions and good tournament results and whatnot, it's not the be all end all. And if we're focused on that feeling and just going for that feeling without worrying about the fundamentals, yeah, you'll get that feeling, but you'll also go broke. many times. I'm great at building up my bankroll, but I always lose. And I'm like, because you're just playing for the rush. You're not playing to build the foundation, the skills, the habits that lead to longevity. So I think for newer players, taking a longer time horizon, a bigger picture view, and focusing more on what can I do to become the most well-rounded, most complete, the best player I can be as the primary focus, rather than how can I make the most money as quickly as possible? Because what I've learned from poker and from finances in life, it's not about getting rich quick. It's about learning the habits of a skill set that can make you money. And then the habits that will lead to building wealth slowly over time so it can compound to a large amount, and preserving it so you don't lose it. I remember Brunson said that, all poker players go broke in their career. And I think this has changed with the advent of the internet because we just have more options and whatnot. But I resolved to never go broke as a poker player, ever. I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm never going to go broke. So I was very cautious about bankroll management and slowly, steadily building it up and alternative sources of income and all that. And I think offering that, which we also discuss in the book, is very valuable for people to have the complete picture of what it is to be, a professional poker player in the modern day.
Okay. Do you think that kind of advice can also apply, as well as applying to like maybe a young hardcore pro, to like maybe like a middle-aged guy who doesn't play for a living, but they enjoy playing and they like to play maybe a few hours a week or something. They go to Vegas once or twice a year. Can they still benefit from adopting this kind of approach that you discuss for like the more kind of serious professional player who wants to
Yeah. I mean 100%. The same way that the 20-year-old wants to have this game down and be able to make a bunch of money at it by the time they're 23, 24, 25. Well, the guy who's in his 40s or 50s, he can learn it just as well in the same period, right? You can pretty well master the game if you put a lot of effort over a 3 to 5 year period, and then you have however many years it is, 10, 20, 30, 40 years to still enjoy it. I think the sooner someone can get a big picture, get more enjoyment and derive more benefit from every session they play, because they actually understand what's going on. So I don't think age is really an issue in that regard. It's just what's the desire, what's the motivation. If the motivation is not to win all the money, but to win more consistently, to have a more positive experience every time that they go out to the card room or to play, their local home game, then of course, this book is a fantastic guidebook for having that exact result.
Okay, now obviously you're focusing on cash games in the book, but I know a lot of players like to play tournaments because they can make a big killing if they get really lucky, run really well, play well in a tournament. So how do you balance the fact that in cash games it's much more of a kind of linear, you're not leaping. I mean, I know the graph of a successful player over time will still bounce around a lot, but it won't bounce around quite as much as tournaments. So do you think it's good to focus on the cash games, even if a player likes the real rush of the tournament, because you can make like the really big score and get to a final table or something like that?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because we discussed this about whatever it was, a year and a half ago, 2.5 years. I don't remember when we first had the discussion about doing the book. And you said, "Hey, Evan, would you like to write a book on tournaments?" I said, "No, I wouldn't like to." And you said, "What do you mean? I mean, you're playing tournaments. You've got videos about tournaments. Why don't you want to make a book about tournaments?" And I said that I felt that cash games were a better way to build the skill set for poker. They were a better way to derive long-term income from poker. Just have a more consistent experience. Yes, there's fluctuations, but the fluctuations in cash games, you're slowly working your way up. Whereas tournaments, I mean, you've seen the graphs, right? It's down, 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 pop, down, 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 pop, down, 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 pop. And I remember when I decided to make the shift to tournament poker, probably about 2013. And this was, a 3 to 4 year experiment, you can call it. And I remember I'd have that experience of lose, 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 to the point I didn't even want to track my results anymore. And then I'd get the win and people would be like, "Yo, great, man. You just won 10 grand. You just won 30 grand. You just won 200 grand. I'd say, "Yeah, but in the case, other than the really big ones, I'm like, yeah, I needed that to just pretty much get back to where I was at the start of the month." Whereas with cash games, because it was so consistent, I would be refreshing that graph every day. oh, how we doing week, day 3 into the month, week 1 into the month, week 2 into the month. And it's consistent. It's consistent. And for someone like me who, I like the instant gratification a little bit. I like that direct feedback a little bit. I feel like cash games, they give you accurate feedback more quickly than tournaments do. Tournaments, you have to get a larger sample. You have to wait a longer period to get, an accurate depiction of how well you're doing in the game. And even still, a lot of your results can come down to the results of one hand. You get a coin flip heads up and, you're playing for 100K. That's a 100K coin flip, right? And if three-handed, similar thing. So one of the reasons I much prefer cash games to tournament is, for the most part, all hands are equal. If you're playing 100 big blinds in every game, pretty much all times you get into a similar situation, the value of the spot is the same. So it's less likely that luck is going to have a huge impact. Whereas in tournaments, every spot's so unique and you're so rarely going to find yourself on that final table, or heads up in that situation where so much of it comes down to luck. And I think there was a study done, I forget the exact study, but I remember finding this fascinating. I was listening to a book, I think it was on addiction, because I'm very interested in addiction and researching it. And it spoke to workplace depression. And it said that the most common predictor for workplace depression was for people to be working in a workplace where they felt they had no control over their outcome. And that that there wasn't a direct correlation between how much effort they put in and the reward they got. And I thought, wow, tournament poker. You're putting in all this effort, but then so much of it is going to come down to luck. No wonder why so many people who focus primarily on tournament poker can be in a poor mind state at a high frequency, because they're going through that. And that's where I recognize, like, okay, I should get the focus back on cash games. I should get the focus back on business, because in those things, you largely get out what you put in. You work on your game, you get your strategy, and then you apply it. And you're not getting a huge win rate, but you're getting a consistent win rate. And when you combine a consistent win rate with a large sample, then you have a large amount won. You have a large total amount won. Big money in tournaments. I truly believe that if I mapped out all my hours between cash games and tournaments, that the hourly probably would have been similar, maybe even better for cash games. And even though, I had, 200K month in tournaments, which is really exciting, if you compare with all the hours it took over the year and a half or whatever it was to get there, I probably would have made the same amount of money or more money if I just stuck with cash games without all the emotional fluctuations.
Yeah.
So for people who really want that rush, they really want that excitement, by all means, play some tournaments. That's why me personally, I found that the best thing to do is have cash games as the foundation. That's your training ground. That's where you put in your work. That's where you're getting your consistent results. And when the tournament comes to town, you're going to be one of the best players in the field, and you can study the different stack sizes. DMB's got many fantastic books you can reference to prepare in, the weeks or months leading up to it. And then you have a really good chance to get that big score, but you won't be dependent on it, because you won't have played 50 tournaments this year where you're minus 50,000 and you need a top 3 to get back to even. No, you've consistently made, a few hundred every week, whatever, where the tournament comes, like, I can take all my action and, invest 1,000 or 2,000 on this tournament. If it goes well, great. I'll have a big score I can celebrate. And if it doesn't, no big deal. I'll go right back to the cash games and continue to just get way ahead. So that's my experience with them. And I definitely feel there's a place for tournaments. Some of my best experience tournament runs, but I also saw the danger, having lived with many tournament pros and gone in that community for a while, the danger of getting, too dependent or too addicted to the rush that comes with them. Because I find if you're chasing that rush and forcing the action, it can snowball to the downside pretty quickly.
I remember reading another thing that's just fairly obvious, I suppose, is that if you're a cash game player, you're quite likely to, your bankroll or your poker winnings are quite likely to be at their peak at any one point. It's not likely that you've dropped off. Whereas a tournament player is like almost never at their peak, because they lose, like, whatever it is, 85% of the tournaments they play or something. So you're kind of like, you always feel like you're a losing player when you're a tournament.
Yeah, and how would that feel? What kind of a character does it take? Obviously, a very strong, resilient character, to want to show up every day knowing you're going to lose and get served 80 to 90% of the time. That's very disheartening to me. Whereas cash games, yeah, we would have a term for that called being peak stuck. If you're refreshing your poker tracker graph for the year or for your career and you're not at the peak, you're like, what's going on? And then, you know, your roommate would be like, dude, you're just peak stuck. It's not a big deal. Like, you're going to be back there. You're like, right. Just like stock markets have healthy corrections. Variance has its corrections in the charts. We'll get back there. But it was this huge deal if you were peak stuck. Whereas in tournaments, you're always peak stuck. Yeah, that's a great point, Brian.
Okay, just give us a quick answer to this. It's one thing that I puzzle about myself sometimes. If you say you're going to devote, I don't know, 12 hours a week of your life to poker, how do you think you should split that between studying and playing? What do you think is like a healthy percentage?
Okay, okay, I'll do my best to give a quick answer because there's many schools of thought. It depends who you're talking to. In my experience, my personal experience, I would probably do a 1-to-2 study to play ratio in the beginning, and then I would trim it down. I think once that you have a good foundation and a good understanding of the game, that practice is what's going to get you closer to perfection, because practice and application of the theories is what leads to understanding. Yeah. I've gone through periods where I just study, and I felt like I must be the worst player ever because there's so much I didn't know. And then when I went to play, I'm doubting what I'm doing. I'm thinking too much because there's too much in my mind. When I stopped the studying and just played, it kind of made it so the concepts that were important stayed top of mind, and the concepts that sounded nice, but maybe they were kind of excessively fancy and unnecessary, kind of drifted away. And I find the more that we play, the more we realize what's actually important. Yeah. But you know, we want to study a little bit here and there so we can keep fresh. But if we spend too much time in theory land, we forget about what's really important, and it's easy to get into just wanting to know all the buzzwords and whatnot, instead of just being like, what works? And that was a lot of what I tried to put in the book is, this is what works for sure. These are the things to think about. This is an approach to take that you can then, you know, make it your own from there. But these foundational things will always be true. They always work. But simple's often all you need, right? So I'd go 1-to-2. And as you become really confident that you feel like you're one of the best players in the game, just play.
Okay, and finally, I'd like to just ask you. You've obviously just written a book for us, so you know, people can get their poker information in all sorts of different ways these days. They can, you know, there's webinars, there's videos, there's all kinds of private coaching. What do you think people can still get from a simple, nice, straightforward, kind of almost old-fashioned means of getting using a book that maybe you don't, you know, what's your take on that? What, I mean, obviously, because I publish books, I have my own ideas as to why I think they're great and such a good studying tool. But what do you find from like using a book that maybe you don't get from these more modern mediums?
Okay, so I'll share mine and then you share yours. And I think that showing this page probably summarized it quite well. And from writing a book, now I understand this more as well. On the internet, you put out a video, you put out a blog, you put out whatever, and there's tons of content. And often one of the criticisms to training sites, so there's too much content. I don't know where to go. I don't know where to start. I don't know what to do. There's just too much. It's at first think, great, we have lots of content, but there's too much content. So people don't know where to go. And a book is very structured by its nature. It has to be structured. It has a clear thesis that is developed from, you know, intro to conclusion and works its way through. So I learned a ton from books in my early career. You know, I probably read 20 poker books, and I learned a ton because they set the foundation properly, such that when I went to those training videos where I was getting offered more advanced concepts, I knew how they fit into the bigger picture. You know, when you're building a puzzle, you kind of put the corner pieces first, and then you build out the sides, and then you fill in the middle. Yeah. But what I feel like a good book does is it that you can then work within. And if you don't have that framework, you'll get all the puzzle pieces from these advanced trainings, but you won't know where they go because you don't see the big picture. So I feel like a book really gives you the whole picture so you can plan. It's easier to navigate because you know exactly where things are located. And unlike, a random training video here and there, it's going to be very vetted because lots of eyes have been on it. Lots of time has been spent on it. I don't even know how many hours this project encompassed all told, from research to planning to writing to reviewing to editing to reviewing again to graphics to all that. I think you can trust the information you're receiving is more well researched. You can trust that it's more complete, and then it can be your baseline to go to those training videos. But this way, because you have the foundation, when you go to the training videos, you're not like, what does that mean, or where does this fit? You know where it goes. And I think they're probably just the best tool as the foundation. And also the other reason I really like books is because the experience of reading a book, you have a very one-pointed focus. Some videos have that effect too, but there's no distractions. And the state of mind that we're naturally in as humans when we're reading is very much one of focused relaxation and concentration. And that is one of the best states to receive information, as opposed to a state of being highly stimulated and there's so much going on and I don't know where to look and all that. So I find that books put us in the right mind state for learning. They tend to be more complete, more well-researched, more well-vetted. And the great thing with a book is you can work with it too. You can mark it up. You can put your sticky notes. Like, a book can be an interactive experience. You can't really write on a video. You can mark like, yes, at this timestamp, something happens, but it's harder to then go back and review it. Whereas a book, if you get the hard copy, you can mark the sections you want to work on. And I feel like for a study tool, for a reference, it's nice because it's all in one place. And that's why I was really happy you brought me onto this project, because it gave me the opportunity to put all the most important stuff in one place. Sure, I've got 500 YouTube videos, but it's the same thing. I don't know what to watch. Everything you need is here. And if you need more, you can watch those videos. But here I took all that stuff and I diluted it and concentrated down to one work that, it's only 360 pages. It's not that much, right?
There's a ton of content in 360 pages. Believe me.
So those are my thoughts on, where books can be superior and are essential kind of foundational pillar for developing one skill set. How do you think they fit into the picture?
Yeah, you've pretty much answered it. I thought you answered that really well, actually. I think you've summarized all the points that make books a fantastic learning tool. The one small thing I would add is that I find, just a personal thing, I find if I'm watching a video, a training video or something, I have a tendency to kind of zone out quite easily. Like, I'll start, oh, that was lucky. Oh my God, he paired the fire. Oh, he got sucked out on. And I'm not kind of really thinking about what's going on. And I can also start daydreaming and suddenly I'm 20 minutes into the video and I can't tell you anything that I've seen. Whereas with a book, you can't do that. You're kind of forced to engage with the material. You can't kind of like read a book in a daydream or something. So I find that, in terms of absorbing information, and like you say, books are ours certainly are very well organized and structured, and so you get the kind of story of what you're trying to learn and the information that you're trying to absorb. So I think that's a big plus point. You can't really you can't suddenly be on page 56 and not remembered anything because you will have interacted with the material. So that's my small little take on it. Anyway, I think we can wrap up there. This is Evan's great new book that he's been talking about and explaining how he put all of his 10 years of, probably more than that, of poker experience, but as a player, as a learner, as a coach, all distilled into this book. So this is available. I think it's actually out early next year, but you can pre-order it in all the usual channels, including on our site. I'd like to say thanks very much, Evan, for giving us a bit of time for this interview. If there's anything else you'd like to add, just quickly before we wrap up.
Well, thank you for having me on, Byron. I greatly appreciate it. And anything else that I want to add before we wrap up? Honestly, this is the book that I wish existed when I started playing poker. There were a lot of great books, a lot of foundational materials that I learned from, the Harringtons, the Sklanskys, the Millers, the Malmus. They were all great. I wrote this book. The name's similar to a couple of other books that you've published, obviously, yeah. Mastering Small Stakes No Limit Hold'em, Mastering Small Stakes PLO. I wrote this book to be the foundation, to be, if there was a missing piece, I wanted this to kind of fill the gap. So kind of this is the base of your book pyramid, and you build your Mastering No Limit Hold'em and Mastering PLO and your your modern poker theory on top of it, because this will both give you, the how to play poker. It'll also give you the how to be a poker player. It'll give you an understanding of all the key language, all the key lingo, everything that just kind of sets the foundation such that anything more advanced you can build on top of it and have with confidence. So I just want to say thanks, Byron, for inviting me to do this project, keeping me on this project when times were tough, getting us pushing through. It really is a dream come true to actually have this thing in hand. I know my parents are going to be very proud about this. I'm really happy about it. I'm just really excited to get feedback from the community on the book. I think I included everything that's essential. We've got a lot of kind of new graphics and some new ways of looking at things, because I'm a very visual guy. Yeah. So I think for some people who have had trouble with poker books before, thinking they're a bit too technical or a bit too encyclopedic per se, I think that our mix of visuals and charts and tables and words will make it easier for people to just kind of get, oh, that's what gets someone in a winning frame of mind and get someone winning results. I'm just excited for the feedback that comes. So anyone who reads it, feel free to send me an email after you complete or even partway through. Let me know what you think about it. Give me your feedback, because that's kind of a big reason I did this, is to help the community. And the only way I'll know if I actually succeeded is from hearing back from you guys and girls. So please feel free to write me, and I'll let me know your experience from reading and applying Mastering Small Stakes Cash Games.
Okay, that's great. Thanks very much for joining me today, Evan. I appreciate your time, and thanks for all the brilliant way you summarized the book, and thanks for doing a great job on it. So this has been Byron Jacobs talking to Evan Jarvis, mainly, well, almost totally about this new book, Mastering Small Stakes Cash Games. Thanks very much, Evan.
Thanks, Byron.